I mean, I've always been interested in nature.
Kind of Mother Nature's perfect animal, you know?
Seeing Nile crocodiles and being kind of terrified.
Welcome to the Nature Talks podcast. Welcome to Nature Talks podcast, the podcast where we explore the intricate connection between biodiversity, conservation, and our role in preserving the natural world. I'm your host, Erfan Firouzi, and it's been a while since we made the episode. So today, we have a very special guest and a colleague of mine here, Ali Zlatar. Of course, Ali is an award-winning artist, scholar, and activist, best known for her initiative and in other initiatives, The Starving Artist and This Body of Mine, which explores themes of identity, mental health, and resilience through art. Her work challenges social structures while advocating for marginalized communities. And today we'll discuss how she is using art to inspire climate action and environmental awareness. Ali, welcome to Nature Talks.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
Me as well. Lovely to have you here and excited for the conversation. So, you have used your art to highlight important social issues from identity to mental health. How did you basically first connect your artistic practice with climate activism and environmental justice?
Yeah, absolutely. I think for myself, it honestly came from an experience of ill health. So growing up, I suffered with a very severe eating disorder for over 10 years, and I didn't have family support. So very traditional Eastern European mental health was not talked about growing up. So for me, I really found a voice through art. And on that recovery journey, one of the biggest issues that I saw was as someone who was trying to get better, I also saw the impact of the pharmaceutical products to get better on the planet. So I saw that there was so much waste from the pill bottles to the long instruction manuals that nobody ever reads. And I felt powerless because I was trying to get better, but at the same time, I saw that me getting better was causing harm to the planet. So what I really tried to do was explore these feelings through art. And from there, I actually launched it as an art billboard campaign, so across the UK and Germany. And we got the traction of over 5 of the top pharmaceutical companies, and they really wanted to understand these perspectives of the end user experience and how can they make recommendations and changes to better their practice. And I realized that this art voice could be so important in how we're addressing the climate discourse.
That's amazing. Is such an insight. Over the years, that I've been active for biodiversity activities, but I've seen that, the connection between different issues and art is becoming stronger than ever. We have got art exhibitions related to nature. We have got activism based on, art and connecting it with different aspects. So yeah, art has the power to evoke emotions and urgency in a way that, data alone or research alone or advocacy alone often can't. So. And when we see something visually represented, it creates an immediate emotional response. It seems like storytelling through, images, which is of course critical for driving action on issues like climate change and so on. Talking about this, I come from a background of, species or biodiversity. So species extinction, when we talk about it, and habitat destruction are accelerating at an alarming rate, People like me these days are just questioning themselves, will we have a future if we go for the fields like ecological conservation? So have you explored biodiversity loss in your work, and how can art help people connect with the urgency of this crisis?
Absolutely. I think when it comes to biodiversity, even the same way that I try to approach it through more person-centered issues, it's really trying to give a platform for these marginalized perspectives. And for me, I firmly believe that art gives voice behind the numbers of those neglected. And when we're looking at ideas of speciesism, we don't have accurate say or even stakeholder engagement with so much of the loss of biodiversity. So art is this way for us to have this alternative discourse, but then also really give us these insights into some of these issues that have been severely neglected. And when we're trying to understand, the stakeholders, how can you connect to something that is experiencing and living on this planet in a very different way than us? And it really requires that like authenticity and vulnerability to kind of connect to these topics. And I think if you're able to connect, you're able to have more of a genuine passion to want to help.
No, that's absolutely correct. I mean, when I recall our last episode, for those who have not checked it, our last episode was about an experience and a conversation that I had with Dr. Jane Goodall, and one of the aspects that we spoke about was, of course, art. I mean, I gifted her a feather painting, which is, of course, blending painting with nature's own canvas, which are leaves or feathers, anything at all. And conservation efforts often struggle with engagement because we see, whether it's youth or whether it's people who are in different generations, they always talk about, oh well, I don't live in nature anymore. I'm not connected with it, so I don't care. But when we look at the artists, they translate complex ecological issues into visual narratives. Like, I know that there's an account called Peppermint Narwhal, and they make artworks and small art posters in collaboration with IUCN, and they write small details, like a journal, which is, of course, very, very visually a narrative. And it makes these issues, tangible. And I now want to see how your work speaks to that deeper human connection within every aspect, including nature. And when I took a look at your work, it often explores personal and collective identity. So how do you see the relationship between identity, the human body, and our connection with nature, especially in the face of issues like climate change?
I think there's this idea of like the mind and body relationship, because we're experiencing it on a very individual level. And then for us, that physical body is how we're interacting with the world. So like, for me, I love, we were just chatting about it before the call, but I love warm weather, and just feeling like this warmth on your skin is that way that you can kind of connect to it. But then at the same time, like for us, when we're looking at how we're engaging with the planet, like there is this way that for the individual trying to experience, and in my art I call this the auto-ethnographic. So our self-experience is very, very different for each person. I know some of my friends back in the UK, they do not like the sun. They want to try and avoid it at all costs. They prefer the rain, but it's just very experiential. So again, like I'm going to tie it back to creative arts. It's really just looking at the differences on how we're interacting with the planet. So art really gives us this connection to what we're feeling, both physically and mentally, and it helps try to translate this experience, perhaps.
Yep, I mean, it is true, and that's such a powerful perspective, because even my aunt is my professional artist, so she does a lot of connections of personal life and things that she sees through art. So I think it's a way, the same way we have got our senses, smell, sight, touch, and so on. I believe that for artists, it's opening of a new sense, of self-exploration, and showcasing what they feel about the world around them. And, in many ways, our bodies and the planet are interconnected. So when ecosystems suffer, so do human communities, whether through, displacement or food security or, mental health challenges. And your work really captures that intimate link between the self and the environment. And what is unique talking about that, you sometimes do art, but not that often. And I'm really, really, really happy to have you on our call today on the podcast, because it's not always when we see an artist so passionate about different causes, And I think you're the first one to ever come on the podcast out of the many experts and people that we had. Talking about that, of course, comes in climate anxiety, and it's a growing concern. Maybe even possibly I could have it. and especially among younger generations, because they come and think of about the future, about life, how it's going to be, and of course about their careers. And you have been an advocate for mental health. So how do you think art can help people process their grief, fear, and uncertainty about about different type of environmental crises?
I mean, honestly, first off, I relate heavily to this climate anxiety and us in this space because a lot of us do care, and this anxiety comes from this feeling of powerlessness because there's big people in fancy suits that are making decisions on our behalf, and there is this lack of agency and control and this internalized struggle. So I think with art, what it really does is help not only be a communicative tool, but also a way for us to process, reflect, and engage with all these feelings that we're going through. And one of my artworks is called A Fragile Atmosphere, and trying to describe it for the audio listeners, but basically it's a portrait of myself, but there's this gray mist and fog, and inside there's essentially one small plant in a glass jar. You see how fragile this planet is, and yet we have this care that we need to give to it. So for me, I really use this art to kind of navigate this experience of, when you're having this tension, this anxiety, how do you both use the art as a space to kind of spit out what you're feeling, but then also how can you even reflect on it on a different way? Art, I definitely believe, is not just a pretty accessory on gallery walls, but can be at the forefront of how we're creating change. And when I know that I'm not the only one dealing with these feelings, what I developed was the climate it's called Voices Above Water, but it's a series of climate art-based reflection cards that give people an individual prompt to look at a theme such as eco-trauma or looking at climate displacement, and then allows them to make any artwork in any medium that they want, so whether it be body movement, photography, clay, and navigate this topic. And then they have reflective questions. So it's something that can be done in isolation, or it can be, say, a mother and child or a group doing these activities together, because art is this way that we can connect to these topics and have that exploratory playground, so to speak.
That's amazing. I mean, that's a really, really important approach. So you're basically teaching people how to, live down that feeling while touching on their creativity and curiosity, which is something that people don't have these days much. Yeah, to be honest, I do agree, because art provides a space to cope, reflect and transform fear into action. And instead of people feeling helpless, or people they can use creative expressions to process what's happening and find strength in community-driven efforts. So your initiative, the Starving Artist, is a powerful platform for artists advocating for social change. And have you worked with artists focused on climate change or environmental themes? And how does your initiative perhaps support those voices?
Absolutely. So we have a whole entire subset of the Starving Artists really dedicated to climate activism specifically. So we do a wide range of projects looking at things such as marine life and biodiversity. It's even looking at how gender is affected by climate. So one of the projects that we've done is looking at menstruation products and the period sustainability. Often it's a one-time use. There's also lack of accessible, say, sustainable period products across Asia. So one of the projects we did was looking at using both reusable period products and teaching people how to make their own, but then having art as that way for us to kind of be able to navigate and look at both the climate and the health and well-being, but then also the sustainability and the artistic voice. So absolutely, we have tons of spaces and projects within the Starving Artists for it, and we really get to see that art can address so many of these different issues, even ones that you think art may not be super helpful in, like looking at soil conservation efforts. But what we do is we made, say, a children's book that talks about a seed's journey to looking at finding a place for him to be able to rest. But if all the soil's polluted, then the seed can't rest. So it's a very cute, but then also highly effective way to navigate so many different topics in the climate space.
That's lovely. I mean, looking at, your work, we can see that, doesn't matter what background you come from, there's always a connection you can find to nature, to the environment. And it's whether through art, through music, or through advocacy, speaking, storytelling, games, you name it. Everything at the end connects with nature if you want to connect it. And that's incredible, because the way that you are giving artists a platform to address environmental issues, it shows and it bridges the gap between activism and creative expression. Especially that soil situation was very unique. And sometimes the most impactful movements actually come from culture shifts, sparked by art itself. And because even when we look at throughout the history, something which is very vivid in people's minds is not the simple history; it's the art that is related to it. The art on the ancient Egypt's, the king's tombs and so on, or perhaps the cave art. We vividly imagine it once we talk about it. And
Exactly.
Conservation efforts often struggle with engagement, as I mentioned. So, what role do you think art and storytelling play in mobilizing people to care about wildlife conservation and biodiversity?
Well, I think especially when it comes to conservation efforts, it really highlights the importance of the issue. And I think that while as an artist, I think that, my voice should be heard and be helped, but it's not the only voice that needs to be heard. And when we're looking at the diversity of conservation issues, but then also conservation and community, so say indigenous cultures, we need to be able to have inclusive and accessible ways for people to have parts in these conversations. And if we're really not addressing these issues, say within properly, not only having the awareness and the education, but trying to make sure that it's focused on long-term solutions, it means that for us, it's not going to work. So art and even that storytelling element gives us that importance, that why, that deeper understanding of these topics that for us, it gets to the root of these issues. And so once we have those, we're able to genuinely make more change based off of this more in-depth and engaged understanding.
That's amazing. That's, to be honest, point on. And as I mentioned before, we are seeing more collaboration between artists, scientists and activists in addressing climate change. As I mentioned, IUCN was one because I'm part of the IUCN youth commissions and the professional youth group at the Species Survival Commission. And one of the initiatives is partnering with artists for the Red List of Species to spread awareness on them to the general public. So what are perhaps some innovative ways these fields can work together to create a greater impact?
Ooh, give me an unlimited budget and I will give you so many ideas. But on a realistic scale, what I think is really good is how art can help translate that science and that data, especially when we're looking at things such as, like you said, the Red List, or how we're looking at maybe conservation efforts between scientists, and then artists can have dialogues. So then what they're able to do is co-create artworks and be able to disseminate it. So some things that I've been doing with the Serving Artists is bringing it to policy and stakeholder engagement projects. Other ways that we can do this is through, like I mentioned, like art billboard campaigns, doing it through community interventions, right? When we have, say, a public place, especially when we're looking at wildlife and conservation, it's best to bring people into these environments and then really try to engage with them at that personal and intricate level. So arts and sciences can intersect in so many different aspects, but I genuinely think it's what is the best way to engage the specific audience on that topic. Because if you're trying to do say artist-scientist collaboration for young people. I know not a lot of 10-year-olds want to go through and read the data. They just want to be able to look at some of these pictures and have that connection. So it's really trying to be with intentionality on how you're navigating both the arts and the sciences.
Yes, I do agree, because that connection is very important, and there are even more ways the way people are connecting with artists and so on, whether it is making simply going to a woodland area or a forest and making art using the things they find, like putting a tile together, or simply making different structures, different things using things from nature, such as acorns. I also have one of them here with me. And science gives us, the knowledge, and when we look at activism, calls for change, and art makes the issues relatable and personal. So it's a completely triangular relationship here. And when these forces combine, they create something truly transformative, and a truly transformative environmental movement, as we even see through your work. So that's the main questions as of now. I know that the audience will for surely reach out to you, and there are many collaborations we will look forward to in the future. But at the end of the Nature Talks podcast, we have got a tradition of a call to action for the listeners. So if there's one message or action you'd like our listeners to take away from this conversation we have had, what would it be?
I think for me, I would say don't shy away from using arts in your change-making journeys. I know that not everyone believes that they're an artist, that they do stick figures, and that's okay. Because I think whatever form of art you do, like I said, whether it be photography, doing painting, making poems, baking, whatever it is, there's an audience that's going to gravitate towards it because they see that passion, they see that care and that story wanting to be told. So they're going to want to connect with you. So be brave, maybe pick up some pencils and try using art in your change-making journeys, and just also wanting to highlight always that the Starving Artist is this inclusive place to really platform emerging voices. So if anyone does want to reach out after this call or have interest or questions within the work that I'm doing, please do. We're very excited to help change the world together.
That's amazing, and that's a fantastic. By the end, you all can see details of Ali's website and her work on social media down in the description. And of course, every small action, whether through art or activism or daily choices, contributes to a larger movement for environmental justice. And the thing is, we need action, not just talk, So make sure to go out there, explore your passion for nature, and let's see what we can do. And so, Ali, this has been such a meaningful conversation with you. Thank you for sharing your insights and for using art as a force of change. And where can our listeners find your work and support your initiatives? Is it just through your website?
Yeah, so the Starving Artists, we have our own website. There's also the Instagram, which is the starvingartist.studio. If anyone's interested to reach out to me personally, it's Dr. Ali Zlatar. My Instagram's just Ali Zlatar. So hopefully that's one of those ways we'll get you in touch with us.
That's amazing. So to all our listeners, of course, thank you for tuning in. If this episode resonates with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And you can follow, of course, Nature Talks on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many other places. And join us next time for more discussions on climate action, biodiversity, conservation, and our place in the natural world. And of course, do check out Ali's work. Thank you so much for joining in. Have a lovely day ahead.
Bye, guys.
I've always been interested in nature.
Kind of Mother Nature's perfect animal,
Seeing Nile crocodiles and being kind of terrified.
Welcome to the Nature Talks podcast.